The Galactic Senate had spent 73 years maintaining an uneasy peace. The peace was not based on justice or mutual respect. The peace was based on a careful system of bargains, compromises, and sacrifices. Each major power had been willing to give up something in exchange for the stability that prevented galactic warfare. Earth had been willing to give up many things. Earth had accepted restrictions on military development. Earth had surrendered territorial claims to disputed regions. Earth had absorbed refugee populations from other civilizations. But the Senate's latest proposal required Earth to give up something that no civilization should have been asked to surrender. The proposal, presented by High Chancellor Vote of the Valerian Collective, was straightforward and devastating. For the sake of permanent galactic peace, the Senate proposes that the human civilization accept complete responsibility for environmental remediation of the Kepler sector. This remediation would require the entire human population to relocate to the Kepler sector for the next 300 years. During this period, Earth would be declared neutral territory and administered by the Galactic Senate. All human military installations would be removed from Earth. All human defensive systems would be deactivated. In other words, the Senate was asking humanity to surrender their homeworld. The proposal was voted on immediately. 35 out of 47 member species voted in favor. Humanity was left with no choice. The Galactic Senate had spoken. Earth would be surrendered. The Betrayal understood Commander Alexandra Park received the news in Earth Defense Command and felt something shift inside her understanding of galactic civilization. The Senate had not asked humanity to sacrifice something abstract. The Senate had asked humanity to surrender their homeworld to the administration of an external authority. The Senate had asked humanity to accept permanent exile from the world their species had originated on. And the Senate had done this not because it was necessary, but because it was convenient. By removing humanity from Earth, by placing Earth under Senate administration, the Senate could use Earth as a neutral buffer zone between competing powers. Humanity was being sacrificed for the convenience of the Senate. Park made a decision in that moment that would reshape galactic history. She would expose the secret that had been hidden from the Galactic Senate for 47 years. The secret 52 years ago, long before the environmental remediation proposal, Earth's government had discovered something about the Galactic Senate that changed everything. The Senate had been secretly documenting human genetic information, not just cataloging it, weaponizing it. The Senate had been developing a biological weapon specifically designed to target human physiology. The weapon had been created as insurance, a way to eliminate humanity if humanity ever became too independent, too powerful, or too much of a threat to the careful balance the Senate had constructed. The weapon had been developed in a classified facility on a planet classified as part of the Valerian Collective's territory. The facility still existed. The weapon still existed. The program was still active. Earth had known about this for 47 years and had said nothing. Earth had maintained the secret, waiting for the moment when revealing it would have maximum impact. That moment had arrived. The exposure Commander Park did not go through official channels to expose the secret. Instead, Park activated a communication protocol that had been prepared for exactly this moment. The broadcast went out to every being in the Galactic Senate simultaneously. It went out to every major power. It went out to every colony and settlement in known space. The broadcast contained documentation of the biological weapon. The broadcast contained the location of the development facility. The broadcast contained the research files showing how the weapon had been designed to target human genetics specifically. The broadcast concluded with a single statement from Commander Park. The Galactic Senate has asked humanity to sacrifice our homeworld for the sake of galactic peace. The Senate has asked us to surrender Earth to external administration. The Senate claims this is necessary for stability. But the Senate has been secretly developing a biological weapon designed to eliminate humanity. The Senate was preparing for the moment when they could no longer control us. The Senate was building the means to commit genocide against my species. The broadcast ended with a final statement. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Senate. We are severing all diplomatic relations. We are declaring Earth's independence from Senate administration. And we are announcing that we possess knowledge of the biological weapon facility. If the Galactic Senate attempts any military action against humanity, we will publicize the complete research data to every species in known space. We will ensure that every civilization understands that the Galactic Senate maintains a genocidal weapons program. The immediate response the Galactic Senate fell into chaos. The member species that had voted to accept the environmental remediation proposal suddenly understood what they had been complicit in. The member species that had not been aware of the biological weapon program suddenly demanded immediate investigation. High Chancellor Vote of the Valerian Collective made a public statement denying everything. The documents Earth has released are falsified. The biological weapon does not exist. Earth is engaging in deception to avoid compliance with the Senate's legitimate environmental remediation directive. But the documents were too detailed, too specific, too technically accurate to be falsified. The Galactic Senate's own investigation revealed something that contradicted Vogt's denial. The biological weapon facility did exist. The research program was real. The weapon had been developed specifically to target human physiology. The Senate had been maintaining a genocidal weapons program in secret. The political collapse, the revelation that the Galactic Senate had been developing a genocidal biological weapon against humanity, triggered the collapse of the entire Alliance. Species that had been part of the Senate for thousands of years suddenly demanded to know whether they too were targets of classified weapons programs. Species that had been voting in favor of resolutions without understanding the full context suddenly recognized that the Senate had been manipulating them. The Galactic Senate, which had been the dominant political force in the galaxy for 8,000 years, suddenly found itself without credibility or authority. The member species of the Senate began withdrawing one by one. The withdrawal was not angry or aggressive. The withdrawal was deliberate and devastating, a quiet recognition that an institution based on hidden biological weapons programs could not be trusted. The investigation into the biological weapons program revealed something even more disturbing than the existence of the program itself. The program had been authorized not by the Galactic Senate as a collective body, but by a secret council within the Senate. The secret council had authorized the program without informing most Senate members. The secret council had justified the program on the grounds that it was necessary to maintain control over humanity. The secret council had argued that humanity's rapid technological advancement and military capability made humanity a long-term threat. The secret council had been planning, for decades, to eventually eliminate humanity while maintaining the appearance that it was a medical crisis or natural disaster. Commander Park's explanation when questioned about why humanity had hidden knowledge of the biological weapon for 47 years, Commander Park provided an explanation that revealed humanity's strategic thinking. We discovered the biological weapon program 47 years ago. We had to make a decision, reveal it immediately, or wait for the right moment. If we had revealed it immediately, the Senate would have simply moved the program or developed it in greater secrecy. The Senate would have denied everything, and we would have faced military retaliation for our accusations. She paused. Instead, we decided to wait. We decided to let the Senate believe that we did not know about the program. We decided to wait until the Senate had become arrogant enough to try to exile us from our homeworld. And then we revealed the secret. Park continued with insight into the strategic calculation. By revealing the secret at that moment, we showed every species in the Senate what the Senate was truly capable of. We showed them that the Senate was willing to commit genocide against a member species. We showed them that the Senate had been developing weapons in secret. We showed them that they could not trust the Senate's authority or its claims to justice. The dissolution within 6 months of the exposure of the biological weapons program, the Galactic Senate had effectively ceased to exist as a meaningful political entity. The member species that remained were primarily those that had been benefiting from the Senate's power structure. The species that had been marginalized or restricted began forming independent alliances. The galaxy, which had been unified under Senate authority, suddenly fragmented into dozens of independent powers and coalitions. The broader implications, the revelation that the Galactic Senate had been maintaining a genocidal biological weapons program against humanity, forced every civilization to reconsider fundamental questions about political authority. If the Senate could develop such a program in secret, what other programs might exist that the public did not know about? If the Senate had been willing to commit genocide against humanity, what other species might be targets of similar programs? The discovery of the biological weapon program triggered a galactic revolution in political transparency. Species began demanding full disclosure of military and weapons development programs. Civilizations began investigating their own governments for similar secret programs. The unexpected consequence, the collapse of the Galactic Senate, while triggered by humanity's exposure of the biological weapons program, had consequences that extended far beyond the political sphere. The technology that had been developed for the biological weapon, sophisticated genetic targeting systems, was suddenly available to every species that had access to the research files that humanity had publicized. The result was a galactic arms race in genetic weapons development. Every major power suddenly had the capability to create biological weapons targeting specific species. Humanity had exposed the Galactic Senate's secret only to unleash a proliferation of biological weapons across the galaxy. The dilemma recognized Commander Park, recognizing the consequences of what she had done, made a final address to the emerging powers of the post-Senate galaxy. Humanity exposed a genocidal weapons program to prevent our species from being exiled from our homeworld. In exposing that program, we also exposed the technology that created it. Every species now has access to the knowledge needed to develop biological weapons targeting any other species. She paused. I do not know if I made the right choice. I know that I prevented humanity from being sacrificed. I know that I exposed the truth about the Galactic Senate. But I also know that I may have unleashed forces that will result in biological warfare on a galactic scale. Park continued with words that expressed the weight of her decision. Sometimes preventing one injustice requires accepting that you may create the conditions for another injustice. Sometimes the choice to fight against being sacrificed requires accepting that your fight may harm others. The treaty in the years following the dissolution of the Galactic Senate, the emerging powers of the galaxy negotiated a new treaty. The treaty established protocols for the handling of biological weapons research. The treaty prohibited the development of species-specific biological weapons. The treaty established international oversight of genetic research. The treaty was not perfect. The treaty could not undo the fact that the knowledge of how to create biological weapons was now public. But the treaty represented an attempt by the galaxy to avoid the biological warfare that the exposure of the Galactic Senate's program had threatened to unleash. The historical assessment 500 years after the exposure of the biological weapons program, historians examined the moment when humanity had revealed the Galactic Senate secret. What they recognized was that Commander Park had faced an impossible choice. Option 1. Surrender Earth to the Galactic Senate and accept exile from humanity's homeworld. Option 2. Expose the secret biological weapons program and risk triggering a biological weapons arms race across the galaxy. Park had chosen Option 2. The immediate consequence was the preservation of humanity's homeworld. The long-term consequence was the potential for galactic biological warfare. The monument 1,000 years after the exposure of the biological weapons program, a monument was constructed in the ruins of the Galactic Senate's former administrative center. The monument was not dedicated to humanity's victory. The monument was dedicated to the complexity of moral choice in political crisis. The inscription read, "Here, the Galactic Senate maintained a secret biological weapons program designed to commit genocide against humanity. Here, humanity exposed that program to prevent exile from their homeworld. Here, the galaxy faced the consequences of that exposure. The knowledge of how to create biological weapons spread across the galaxy. This monument commemorates the moment when preventing one injustice required accepting the risk of creating another." The continuing debate 2,000 years after the exposure of the biological weapons program, the question of whether Commander Park had made the right choice was still being debated by philosophers and historians across the galaxy. Some argued that Park had been right to expose the program, that preserving humanity's homeworld justified the risks she had taken. Others argued that Park should have chosen a different approach, that there might have been a way to prevent exile without exposing biological weapons technology to the entire galaxy. The debate would never be resolved because the truth was that both positions had merit. Park had prevented one catastrophe while potentially enabling another.